Hey there traders, it's Jeff, and I just wanted to get out an index review video for you ahead of the brand new week. So last week we saw the market, it edged higher, but not in very impressive fashion. We saw no real momentum. We've been trading in this trading range here for a few weeks now, and nothing last week changed on that front. We're still slightly off of these September highs, and we're still slightly above the recent lows. So we're not really breaking down either. There's been a little bit of disparity though between relative weakness in the more speculative indices like the Russell and the Nasdaq, whereas the blue chip senior indices like the Dow and the S&P, they've both held up a little bit better. So let's break them down one at a time along with some key levels that belong on the radar in the coming days. As you know, if the broad market's indecisive, it's going to make it a little bit tougher to get lasting moves in individual names. So if we're able to stay within these ranges, we've got to continue to stay selective with new positions. And I'm, of course, going to have my trading plan available for subscribers each night at thestockbandit.com. So check out the trial if you're not currently a member and if you're interested. So here we go. For the Nasdaq, this index was up about 20 points last week. We're still holding above this 3100 area, and yet we're still shy of the 3196. So we're about a third of the way off the low end of this range, give or take. We're below kind of the mid line, which would be kind of right in here. So we're a little bit beneath that. Friday we saw kind of an ugly reversal. We were able to lift over the past or the previous 3 sessions coming into Friday. Then Friday we set the highs early in the day, and then we of course drifted lower, finished negative on the day. Volume though doesn't really indicate a nasty change of character. So all this really points to, in my opinion, so far is still just continued indecision. So we need to continue to keep a very close eye on this 3100 area. If we get beneath that, then the next levels to watch are going to be 3080 and then 3040, which are kind of right in here. So still range bound. For the S&P, this index was able to nudge past a descending trend line last week on Thursday, and we saw a decent close above that. Some commitment there in terms of price advancing, but volume really didn't help to confirm that. And then on Friday we got up here, we got near the high up here, which for the S&P is up here near 1474. We got to essentially 1471, and then we reversed to finish negative on the day. It's not that we went down very much, it's just the fact that we saw this big rejection at the highs for now. But volume was nothing special, so it doesn't indicate heavy selling. It just simply states that this index is not quite ready to break out of this channel here. So I'm going to go ahead and probably remove this line here in the next day or so now that we've nudged past it. But essentially we're kind of churning at this point at the upper end of the range here for the S&P, and we need to get some other indices moving as well. Support, by the way, for the S&P down here around 1426, and we've held above that ever since it was cleared. That was resistance, then it became support, and right in there. So 1426 to 1430, that's kind of this little support zone here if we do happen to drift lower. For the, let me take a look at the Russell first. This index also tried to push past a descending trend line here on Friday, but it failed to do so. It was able to nudge past it intraday and then finish back below it on a closing basis. So 833 is still support here for this index. We're only hovering now less than 10 points from there. That's only about 1% for those keeping score at home in terms of breathing room for the small caps before we would undercut support and then start looking for support at lower levels. So for the Russell, keep a close eye on this 833 level. In fact, let me just go ahead and extend that out a little further because that's definitely the valid level. The high is up here at 868. It's currently not being threatened, so we're just kind of churning here in the low end of this bigger picture trading range. So I'm going to draw this rectangle here around this trading range that we're in, and you can see in this little channel that we've been in, it's really constricted price. So price has really been unable to gather any momentum here, despite the fact this index was up about 5 points last week. It's really showing no momentum to really get free and clear of this support zone. And then finally is the Dow, which is actually acting pretty well. It posted advances on each of the final 3 sessions last week, but none of them were real big, and also none of them came on heavy volume. We saw pretty light volume overall, and so this index is still just churning beneath this 13 13,661. Now that was a brand new high that was set on Friday, but it was, I guess, a breakout failure because this 13,653 was right here on the 14th of September. That was the high, so we were able to just nudge briefly past that intraday, but then we gave it back up on a closing basis. So the Dow is at the upper end of its range, well above this 13.3 support. That's right down in here. It needs some help from the other indices. This is the senior index. It's only 30 stocks, and it's going to need some leadership from the S&P or the Nasdaq. And currently, neither of them have really been able to gather much momentum either. So it's kind of a mixed market here, but overall, we remain range-bound across the board. So there's a look at the indices. Keep in mind, if the indices are range-bound and they're not really showing momentum, stay selective with new positions. There's going to be good opportunities out there, but it's better to wait for the market overall to start getting some movement, because that's when you're going to get that sympathetic move to really help propel those individual names further than they could go simply on their own. So thanks for joining me for this video. I will have more for you soon, but in the meantime, trade like a bandit.